Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. You're joined by a dear friend of mine. Jessica and I met many years ago in the hair world, and I'm just so honored that she agreed to come on the podcast today. She is a salon owner, she's a leader in the industry, and she has a really big heart for people and growing her teams in her business. And today she is here in the hot seat, hopefully to share some business lessons that we can all learn and grow from. Jessica Kingsbury, thank you so much for coming on. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, for having me. It's my honor.
It's such a friend honor. It's like it hits different when it's a friend, you know. And I
Oh,
first
for
want to
sure.
bring people up to speed. So if they were to Google you, find you guys on Instagram, walk us through kind of your quick career journey and how you ended up to where you are today.
Yeah, I've been in the industry behind the chair being a hairstylist for 22 years. I am originally from Missouri, and then I became an Army wife and traveled across the United States with my husband as an active duty soldier. And he's originally from Washington State, so that wound us landing here at JBLM, and we decided to retire. He decided to retire here, and I decided to open a salon.
Yes.
So one career ended and another door opened for us, which was super cool. So here I am in my fourth year of salon ownership. I own Rooted Hair Studio located in downtown Puyallup, and I have a hybrid-based salon. So I have commission stylists and a couple of renters as well, and we're just thriving and moving and grooving.
Yeah, I think the reason I wanted to have this conversation today and what brought Jessica to the hot seat is this concept of leadership in business. And then how do you make decisions? Like, when is it the right time to hire and grow? What does that look like? How do you do it effectively? We were having these conversations not on the podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to record this because I know you're not the only one who's gone through this. I've gone through this with different hiring decisions that have worked, not worked, things I would do different. So, do you mind sharing a little bit what specific hiring story happened in your business? Like what led you to hiring this role? And then we'll kind of get into the meat of what we're talking about in today's episode.
Yeah, so as a business owner, salon in general, like there's a lot of hats that you carry in any ownership position. And I think it's really hard for people to let go and delegate where delegation needs to happen, but you start to do all the things and you literally can't. And so that is what leads you on to bringing on a team member to help you so you can feel better and thrive in the areas that you need to as a business owner. And so I felt really defeated and burnt out on some levels of running all the positions. And so I felt like it was time for me to hire on my front desk position. It was a position that I've literally dreamed about for a long time, but my business was just never in a place that I financially felt ready, or was my heart open to allowing people to come into that spot, that sweet spot of letting things go and letting someone else take charge a little bit. And so I hired on my front desk girl thinking, now's the time. We are ready. We are finally in that spot where it makes sense. And I thought that I had all my ducks in a row. And I thought that I was ready and I had the packet of like, this is what you need to do. And this is the rundown. And I was like, this is an easy transition. The girl I hired was amazing. She was really great. Her customer service level literally can't be beat. And so I brought her on to the team, and it lasted for about 6 months and then it crashed. And so that was really hard. So we were all just thriving, and there were a few things that were happening along the journey of, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that. And so I kind of restructured the position based on, as in ownership, you pivot and you shift as needed. And I thought that I was giving her everything that she needed to grow in this position and to delegate these duties. And our business started to decline a little bit. I hired her in the summer months. And if anyone knows, like come May, June, salon life is banging. Like it is busy. It is a hard time to get in. And it takes you all the way through the holidays. And at that point, the holidays hit and they were over. And I seen this like landslide happening where financially, when I brought this role on, like I was responsible for her income. So I knew that I could make it work. But when my business started to decline, I was pulling from my savings to pay her. And as a business owner, that is never okay. Um, but in my heart, I couldn't let her go because I have a hard time with that. I have personal connections and I felt like I needed her. And then financially, it kept happening. And I was like, I have to let it go. Then I reassessed this position and I realized that it wasn't just the financial piece because sometimes you can financially not have the money to pay someone, but you pull money from places that you didn't know you had it because it's working out so well. And that was my crossroad. I was analyzing the position and I had all these things marked out. This is what you do. You come in, these are the things you do. This is how you respond to things. These are your daily duties. And when I sat down and analyzed her position, I was like, OMG, like, I don't know what this receptionist does in a day.
Mm.
Like, I'm the business owner and I don't know what's being done because at the end of the day, I hired her on for this position. So when I was done with my last client or I was done with my, ownership role of doing inventory and back end and all the things that we do, that I was going to be able to just walk away because I had delegated all these duties to help me. So that way I didn't have to stay an hour or 2 hours past my shift. Like I could go home like everyone else. I could actually be a salon owner that has boundaries of like, this is when my day is over. And then I was finding myself staying an hour or 2 hours later to complete these duties that I had aligned for my receptionist. And so when I sat back and like really looked at things, I was like, you know what? This is my fault. My leadership failed. And that's a hard pill to swallow for a
It's
salon
my least
owner
favorite, but it's so true. Yes.
and a
Yes.
control freak.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was my fault. Like, what? I had this handbook. Like, read the handbook and ask questions. And she did. And she needed more. And so I thought I was giving her more. I thought I was like, okay, let me type all this up and give it to her. And then we sit down and we have like a 15-minute conversation. And, I'm like this all the time. Like, I'm just on that hamster wheel all the time. And I love it. But sometimes it hurts me. And in this position, it hurt me because I didn't, after I let her go, I had to analyze everything. And I'm like, you know what? I never did sit down and have like a one-on-one with her. I did that quarterly, just like I do with the rest of my team. But when your business is failing or a position in your business is failing and you're struggling and all the pieces aren't like aligning together, you can't just sugarcoat it. You can't just be like, okay, well, this is what needs to happen. You actually have to sit down with that person and you have to be a leader and you have to tell them, this is what you're doing wrong and this is what we're going to correct. And you don't have to be mean about it. Like, taking out the time to correct them so that way it can make sense. Like the financial piece wasn't there, but if she would have been like skyrocketing and taking control of everything I was delegating, I would have found ways to not have to fire. I never want to fire a person or let them go.
Yeah.
I don't like to say fire, I like to say let go.
Yeah. It feels aggressive.
And yeah, it's very aggressive. And I'm
Yeah.
not an aggressive person. I literally cried when I had to let her go because I was like, I can't believe this is where this is taking me. And then the next day I cried more because like she wasn't there to be like, good morning, you know? And then when I realized that it was all my fault, that I didn't do what I needed to do to lead her into this position. And in the end, our relationship ended because I didn't train her the way that I needed to. I didn't take out the time to properly train my front desk girl. And I think with every single position in your business, there's a different training piece with every different personality, every different, you know, type of position. You don't train them all the same. They're all so different and you have to learn what works. And you can't just be like, oh, it's fine. And then like on to the next, like
Right.
I'm not on to the next. Like, I want to hire a front desk girl. Like, I loved having someone there to be the front line of my business, to meet and greet and answer and have that point of connection with every single client so they know when they come in that that person's going to be there and they're going to be happy to see them. It's the first person and last person they see. I think it's essential in a salon. But I have to get all of this straight. Like, I have to dial in my leadership, I have to dial in my positions, and I have to know exactly who and what I'm training in this position. And that's where you're probably going to help me.
I I love this conversation because here, if you don't know this, you live under a rock, but I come from the hair world. And I think what's interesting is in the hair world, you can measure success in a role pretty easily. It's how busy are your books? Like, what percentage of your day is filled with clients? How many of them are like your hell yes, your ideal people? How many people are buying product? Like, how much product are they buying? And then obviously the financials, like how much money am I taking home? How much money am I bringing into the business? If you're a business owner, you can measure success in some similar ways, like how many reviews are we getting on social media and Google and Yelp and all these places? And what's the revenue? Is it growing month after month? Are my team members growing their books? But when it's a front desk, which also insert virtual assistant, online business manager, social media hire. There's a lot of hires that fall under this camp where they're not revenue producing people. They aren't directly tied to bringing in money. How do you measure success in that role? And what Jessica just said, without, I'm sure you realize it, but what probably was happening in the moment is you didn't have any metric to measure what was working or what was not working. And so you're guessing,
Mhm.
she was guessing. And then one day you had to really face the reality of the overall business, and it was impacted by her being there too. She wasn't helping to grow in these other areas. And I just think that we forget as business owners, if there is no way to measure that success, we have to create a way. We have to create a way.
Absolutely.
And for you, like what I kept hearing was ding, 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 time. Like if time was taken off of your plate effectively, meaning things were still happening that you didn't have to be the one to do, that she was taking that stuff off of your plate, I bet you would have found a way to keep her financially. You kind of said that. So,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
hands down. Yeah. It's like all the pieces of the puzzle, you know,
right.
they all have to match together. And when they're not all aligning, then you got to figure out a different solution.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too on the teaching side of things because I think in the hair world specifically, it's such a creative field. Most, I'm the weirdo, but most people learn by hands-on. So you show
Oh,
somebody extensions, for instance, and then you have them do it on a mannequin, and then you kind of audit the mannequin, and then you have a model come in, and maybe you do the model, they do the model. You are, for the most part, doing hands-on training, and that knowledge is transferred that way. Other roles, it's not that linear. There's multiple learning styles, and you kind of have to hit all of them until you figure out what really sticks with that person. And that's where a written manual would probably speak to some people, but not to everyone. And so we think we're doing a great job by documenting it, but that's step one of the entire rest of the board game.
I mean, that hits my soul right there. I mean, like, dang, I didn't hear it in that way, but now that you're going to say it out loud, like, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a full salon that I've trained, you know. I start out with associate stylists and they level up and they grow into these super successful, amazingly beautiful stylists. But
Yeah.
like, I never took the time to train my front desk girl like I trained them, you know.
Exactly.
And had I done that, like taken out the time to be hands on with her, put in time blocks just for her when I was feeling like I was staying late. Like the first day that I stayed late, that next day I should have came in an hour early and I should have
Mm-hmm.
had a meeting with her
Mm-hmm.
about that. And these are the things that I say, don't push them under the rug because that's easy to do. Oh, she just didn't know. So, tomorrow we'll make it better. Okay, well, it's not going to get, I know this now, it's not going to get better without an actual real conversation that you're actually sitting down and training them in that hands on portion so you both understand. And there's a clearer path and there's a clearer role without just being like, oh, she'll figure it out tomorrow. Cause I'll just be like, hey, girl, make sure you get that done. Like that
Yes.
doesn't work for all people. Like we wish that it did. I
Yeah.
wish it did. That's what I wanted in that role was
Yeah.
was that. But I'm such a hands-on person and I like things a certain way. And so that's where I'm like, it was me.
Yeah. And that's humbling but solvable. And the cool thing about your team, you have proof of concept. You have proven you're a great leader. We just need to adjust what has worked for them to fit this specific role and also recognize that it's going to take the time and attention and care that took. I mean, even a simple thing like, say, virtual assistant, front desk, insert, that kind of
Hmm.
admin support role
Yeah.
here. Someone responds, and the VA or assistant you have on your team responds in a way that you wouldn't. And you see the email go through, and you're like, ooh, I wouldn't have said it that way. So you send a follow up email, hey, blah, blah, blah. Hey, girl, you fix it. If you never revisit that conversation with that employee, they'll never learn. And guess what? By going around the employee and forcing them to solve the problem takes way more time. It
Hmm.
also could mean more time going between when that person reached out via email and when the next response comes through, but the lesson will stick. And it's those little catches of like, I'm going to make it right versus I'm going to teach it to be right. There's a difference. And we just don't talk about it because
Oh, hands
like
down.
we cut hair, then we have too many clients, then all of a sudden we have other people who cut hair, and now we're also a CEO, and we just overnight became a CEO. So this is very normal. And again, that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it's so true. You just really have to not forget where you're leading to, you know, like
Yeah.
every position has growth.
Right.
So it's like from day one, where do you see that growth path? And that's where I failed too, because I didn't really have a growth path aligned. I was like, I don't know, she's gonna answer phones and,
Yeah.
greet clients and
We're
that's
busy.
it.
We need the help.
But yeah, but it's more than that, it's just taking out that extra time in your business so that way you're not having to let someone go.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about, okay, when you got to that point of hiring back then, what were the reasons that you knew it was time to hire that role?
We were missing a lot of clients.
Okay.
We had a lot of people that were calling in and we didn't have my staff stays pretty busy. I have, an assistant and she does try to get to the phones when she can, but that's not always the case. And so our phone lines were constantly just being ringing in. Our email was like blasting all the time and trying to keep up between stylists and then me trying to run an assistant program and be a really great leader for my staff while also wearing the hat of like inventory, back bar, cleaning, making sure the plants aren't dying, like all the things, and making sure that our salon had everything for the clients and for my staff um, that was needed to run business. And so I felt like I needed that person because I was just like, I'm busy behind the chair and then I'm busy teaching. And so I didn't really have time for those extra duties and like even running like our social media a little bit, like that takes a lot of time and effort. And I just needed an extra hand in the pot to like doing those few things. That in my mind was easy,
Mm-hmm.
but as a stylist, we're trained that that's just what you do, but like, a admin person, they don't really know how a salon works until you train them.
Right.
You have to give them the training to perform in those areas. And so, and me, like, I'm a fast paced person. So you give me a list and you tell me how to do it, and I'm going to figure it out real quick. But like, not everyone's solution driven like that. And not everyone has that fast pace in them. But that also comes back to the interview process, too. Like in an interview, I've also failed with interviews, like hard.
I love the
um,
radical honesty. Yes, same, same. Yeah,
but it's like you cannot interview a person one time.
no.
Like you can't. And now I'm like, I'm sorry, but like I have to make people jump through hoops sometimes because I want to hear about you. I want to meet you in person. I want to know all the things. And then I want to process that and I want to bring you back in. And with my stylists, I do that. I make them come in and work and I watch them. But for an admin person, like that's hard. Like, how do you make them come in and see how they act? It comes down to the interview, though. I think if I would have interviewed multiple times and put in scenarios and see how she handled it from like her own perspective, I think that would have really helped me in my leadership too, because I can understand like how her brain kind of works and what she needed, because you come in and you're like, oh, you're the new person. Oh, you're so sweet, and but like how that person learns and how that person absorbs stuff and how they actually bring it to life, it makes a big difference. And so I also think that's where I failed too, was she knocked the interview out of the ballpark. I was like, hands down, girl, you want to start tomorrow? Bring it. Like, bring me back all your info and I'll get you on payroll and we'll just make this start happening. And that's how we did it. And I also realized there that, you know, a couple conversations sometimes isn't enough, you know.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is to hire slow, fire fast. It's like
mhm.
make that because they're going to bring their best. And if they aren't, then they're probably not a great fit. So bringing the
Yeah.
best, putting them in scenarios where they're tested, having them come hang out for a day and get out of the room, get out of the way and see what organic conversation happens with your current team members too and get their
Mhm.
input on things. I know when I worked at a salon, I was an apprentice somewhere. And then in turn, I kind of flipped and started to help train some of the apprentices. I would always take them to coffee and
Mhm.
I would get the real. Like I'm
Yeah.
just a stylist here. I'm not the boss. I'm not mom or dad of the business,
Mhm.
and I would report back to the business owner. Here's what I see. Here's some things that concern me. And that was super valuable information too. So hire, slow,
Yeah.
fire, fast.
Oh, yes. I believe in that, but when it comes to actually doing it, it becomes hard.
Yeah. And I think too,
But
that's,
I've learned.
yeah,
I've learned from this. I mean, moving forward, it will be more of a process for every single position
yeah.
in my salon.
And you constantly like improve it and make it better too. Especially when you have more
Yeah.
clarity.
I mean, you can only learn from your mistakes. Like, I hate failing and I hate sitting here on this podcast saying that I failed because personally, that's not who I am. Like, I don't want to share my weaknesses for anyone with anyone. And to know that I did something wrong is hard. But I actually love failing because if you don't ever fail, you can never grow.
Yeah.
If you don't ever put yourself out there to do things that are uncomfortable, if you don't ever have hard conversations, if you don't ever address issues that come up in your business immediately, you're not growing.
Right.
If every position that I brought on into my salon or every relationship I had with every single stylist or beauty professional or whatever that I had, if there wasn't hard parts in any of that, like I wouldn't be where I am today. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, if I didn't have really hard hardship when I came on as a salon owner, I would not have the backbone that I have today. And it
Mhm.
takes a real backbone to run a business.
Yes. Yeah. I think, girl, first of all, that could be a whole nother podcast because I know that
Yeah.
story too. But
Yeah.
all that to say, business ownership is not easy. Growing a team is not easy. Also, it's not the only way to do things. So let this be like a cautionary tale of here's a situation where it didn't go down as well. And now I want to take the focus and have the conversation of, okay, but here's what we do different next time. So
Mhm.
we talked about where your head was at when you hired the first time.
Yeah.
We know what happened. Tell me where your head is at now. Like looking to the future, what needs to click into place for you or the business for you to make that next hire for your team?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I just got to get things mapped out a little bit more. Like, I definitely miss the front roll position. Like, I miss having someone working my front desk. But I've also realized that if we don't have that position, it's also okay too.
Mhm.
Like, we've kind of restructured how the business is ran a little bit. Um, to make booking and stuff like that a little more seamless. We had a little bit of a hectic process, a little bit. For booking, but now we've kind of clarified that. We've made that a lot easier. But that doesn't mean that I don't want someone at the front desk. So I don't really know when the timing is right. I mean, my business and my numbers are definitely on an incline, which is like a really great feeling. But I still am not in a position where those numbers align yet, where, you know, every day is growing, but we're just not in a position financially to bring on that role. Because I mean, having an admin person is a big chunk of change and everything has to align. But I'm also working really hard on the back end of this to know that that's where my growth path is and that that role will be filled. But these are all the things that I've done wrong. And I have a notebook of that so I can remember and I can then properly set up my training for the next one. And I know going into the next position, like for the first 6 months, we will have weekly meetings. Like, even if our weekly meetings is like, I don't have anything to talk about, but let's just go get coffee. Or, you know, I like to mastermind with my admin people. I'm like, what they think. It's good to get different ears and eyes and everything in the business too. But I'm really taking the time right now to structure that position, um, because I thought it was structured, but it wasn't. So just like making sure that like I have everything that they need before I would take on a hire, so that way when my numbers do align and everything does match up, then it's a go, and I know how to lead this position, and I know how to interview this position. And so I'm kind of learning a lot more on that too, um, because dialing in those interviews are important for every single position in your business too. So I feel like I have it with my stylist. And just after like talking this through with you on this podcast, I'm like, yeah, I really need to take that focus of like the hands-on for this
Mm-hmm.
position too. Like it's a salon, we're hands-on people. And
Mm-hmm.
even though the admin is not going to probably be a hairstylist, like we have to train them like a stylist because they're working in our space. They need to understand our language, they need to understand how we work, and they need to understand how the stylist positions work too, because it looks pretty on the outside and it's pretty on the inside, but it's a lot different.
That's like the headline. That's so true. I feel like that's business in general.
Yeah.
Okay, I love you are a completely different person where your head is at for this exact same role. When you were speaking
Yeah.
about where you were at previously, it was like, we're busy. I need the help. These are tasks I don't love to do, and they're falling through the cracks. And now it's like, do I have capacity to train and lead? Do I have the clear vision of where we are headed? Are the rest of my team members performing? You didn't say this, but this is also a fact.
Oh, yeah.
If the rest of the team is not performing at a level to afford this role, okay, how
Yeah.
can me as a leader, how can I help motivate them and let this be a reward? Like, hey, no one, no offense, people, but front desk is not the funnest thing when you're busy behind the chair and you're a stylist somewhere. So it can definitely be a reward because it would take some of the pressure
Oh, for
off so
sure.
everyone can focus on what they do best. And I think those are the questions to ask when you're looking to hire and grow your team. Not like, I'm so busy right now, things are falling through the cracks. I just need a breathing person to like handle some of it. Rarely is that going to lead to success in that role.
Never.
Yeah.
I
Ask
mean,
Jessica. Ask me. I've been there too. I've been there too. More balls get dropped because it's messy.
yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, I don't regret anything,
Yeah.
like I regret the heartache that, my front desk girl went through. I regret the heartache that I went through having that
Yeah.
hard conversation with her. But at the same time, like, I am glad that it happened so that way I could realign my leadership, because it's also opened my eyes to like other things within my business too, where I'm like, I need to get better at that. I need to do that more often. Like when things happen, you just got to quickly take care of them and move on. It doesn't have to be hard. It can be easy and it can be like the smallest things. But sometimes when you let those little bitty tiny things add up, they become something big. So, like, let's just talk about it before it becomes like an issue. And there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with doing that. I think that's being a good leader
Yeah.
is when you see tiny things happen, just nip them. Just, hey, girl, I didn't love how you did that yesterday. Let's work on this. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be a good leader and you want to own a successful business, you have to do the hard things. And that's having those little conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. I say often stop hiding from the hard. That's exactly what that comes down to.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to leave you with some homework. So you don't need to write notes. I will send this podcast to
Okay,
you when
good.
it comes out. But when you are at that tipping point where you're ready, you're like, okay, it's a little scary, but I think we can do it. I think now is the time. And you're having those conversations about hiring the person. We find your unicorn.
Hmm.
Here's kind of some things I think that can help set that role up for success. Number one, giving a presentation or an explanation of where the company is headed, like having that clear vision, not so much like, hey, we're busy, we just need the help, but like, here's where we're headed 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. Because big corporations are doing that. And we as business owners, a lot of us are entrepreneurial. We dream a little bit. Why not share some of that vision from the beginning so they know, like, obviously there's some things that need to happen just in the day to day that can make things better for tomorrow, but here's where we're headed long term. Because if that person is not bought into your long term vision, then they're not going to be motivated to help fix the little leaks in the boat today. So, A,
Love that.
sharing the big vision. I'm a huge fan of it. And I think more business owners should do that. B, setting expectations. And it sounds really simple, but like having them bring to the table part of their onboarding. What are your expectations for me as your business owner? And then you coming to the table, here's my expectations for you in this role. Here's my expectations being a part of just this team as a whole. Maybe every Monday we always have a motivation Monday thing. We have team trainings and they're optional, but everyone comes. Like, what are those clear expectations to us that feel obvious? And it almost feels silly to write it out, but the more clear you are, the better. And
I
then
love that.
the other thing that I love too, and writing out is a piece of the puzzle. So, like, if someone wants to book an appointment, here's the steps that happen. But then I think to take it to the next level, have this new person help build the system for the next person. Because if they're a
Hmm.
part of building it, they take ownership and pride in the process and they may catch things that you don't. And it's also a good catch to see, like, oh, if you wrote it out from A to Z and they only have it from A to F, then you can have that conversation of like, oh, well, this says all of this. So tell me what you saw differently here. And this
Hmm.
is now where we're teaching them and equipping them as like a living, breathing entity in the business versus just like checking off a couple things on a to do list. And I think those three things can be so powerful in the onboarding process. And the last thing to think about is what's your capacity to provide all of that? Because that's a big piece of the puzzle too. If you're in your busiest behind the chair season, maybe it's not the best time to hire on, even though from a business standpoint, it could help you like today, tomorrow, the next couple of weeks. Long term, that person's going to suffer because they got thrown into the fire and they're going to develop bad habits. And you're also not going to see all of them because you're so busy focusing on other things.
Yeah, I love that. All of that. That's very solid advice.
This leadership puzzle, like this whole two things: leadership, like how to be an effective leader and delegate, and then
Mhm.
also how to make decisions, which you kind of talked about before hitting record. If I were to summarize the two biggest problems I see in businesses that are scaling, not just like getting started, it's those two things: time and time and time again. I've seen
Mhm.
leaders hand off all the keys and then things get messy and all of a sudden they have no clue what that person is doing and that person's actually kind of owning and running the business and that's really
Mhm.
scary. And then I've seen people
So
just
scary.
churn through tons of people over and over and having a hard time finding someone that sticks. And that's wasted time and money too. So if you can crack this code, I honestly believe the sky's the limit. So
Oh, I do too. I
yeah,
do too, hands down. It's
yeah,
your sky, your limit. So you do what you want with it, and how you take it is up to you.
totally. And I just appreciate you sharing such a vulnerable thing, especially, small business is small, it's so personal, but what you're saying and what you spoke to, there's definitely someone listening to this who's either in it right now. A, know that you're not
Mhm.
alone, but B,
Yeah.
if they're not in it, it's coming. It's coming if they're growing. And I just think it's important to have the conversation that we had today.
I mean, we have to have growth pains. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah. I It's like a love hate. To me, it's an indication that I'm doing something that's going to help me expand as a person or a boss, and that's worth it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to wrap things up here and I would love to ask what is next for you? Obviously, we know, a future front desk person's probably on the horizon at some point, but even bigger than that, what is next for you and your business?
Yeah, so I've been in hair for a really long time. So I've done hair for like 22 years, which I don't like to say out loud, um but I'm just growing more into leadership, and I've recently launched education locally for local hairstylists to come and master new skills behind the chair and elevate themselves in the industry. And I've also opened up a networking group for hairstylists, or not hairstylists, beauty industry professionals. So it's anyone that's in the beauty field. I feel super passionate about more community and less competition. I think that happens too much in this profession of people being competitive with each other. I'm not for any of that. I just want to grow everyone, and I want us to grow together more as a local community. So I've launched a networking group for beauty professionals to come together to mastermind together and elevate the industry. So
I love that. I think it's so cool and so needed. And I just again want to reiterate how grateful I am for your vulnerability today. I know you're a competitive girl, and I know that you have done so many amazing things in your business. But again, I just really appreciate you sharing this very vulnerable conversation today because I think it was really important and helpful.
thank you. I hope that it reaches a lot of people and that someone can resonate with it and know that you're not alone when you're in, ownership and things don't go the way that you want them to, that everyone goes through it. You just have to take that, what you feel is bad, and you have to turn it into something that is good. You have to take a learning lesson from every pivot that you have in your business so that way you can continue to grow and not let that hold you back. Sometimes we go through really rough patches that are really, really hard, and know that you're not alone and that because you went through that really hard spot, there's only a lot of growth and potential under your belt. So just keep smiling, keep shining, and learn from your maybe mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Where's the best place for people to follow along, keep you accountable, but also see all the stuff that you're up to benefit the industry?
Yeah, I would love for you to follow me on Instagram. My handle is at jkingsbury.stylist. So
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jessica. I just, like I said, love chatting with you and really appreciate you.
thank you so much, Kelsey. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Awesome. And for those listening, if leadership is something that's on top of mind, something that you're struggling with, I actually have an offer for you. I am launching something called the Remastermind. If you go to my website and click kelseymarieknudsen.com/remastermind, I have a little retreat slash mastermind I'm hosting specifically for people who are in this boat in leadership. So if that's you, go check out the website. I'm excited to chat further. And please go give Jessica a follow and say hello from me. All right. Talk to you guys later and catch you next week.